Welcome back. We are going to be talking about the appointment of a police commissioner because the 3-year post of the current police commissioner, Gary Griffith, comes to an end in August. Now, he has already stated his willingness to be considered for a second term. But as we've grown accustomed to in this country, the process for appointing a commissioner is usually a long and arduous one. And very often we have, in the recent past, have persons acting in the position without actually being confirmed. Commissioner Griffith, for a long time, has been one of the few people within recent years who has actually been appointed police commissioner. I mean, yes, we do have former Commissioner Dwayne Gibbs. So the government has made some amendments to the traditional selection process in an attempt, they say, to reduce the long-winded process. But the opposition leader has some concerns, and we want to share some of those concerns with you now.
So, on drafting the 2021 order, the government removed the requirement for the highest-ranked candidate for that name to be brought first for debate. They have removed that requirement. So, you send all the names to Her Excellency, and then what happens? Who will choose which name must come to the House? Again, I say it is the cabinet advising the president. Who selects the candidate to be nominated for Commissioner of Police? The 2021 order does not give the president the discretion to determine which candidate's name is brought first to the House. Is it the president now acting in accordance with the advice of the cabinet to submit names to Parliament pursuant to Section 18? In the Constitution, where the president is not given a specific direction to act, the president will act on the advice of the cabinet. Again, as I say, this is the same cabinet where members, friends, and families are under criminal investigation. Are we then going to be using the Parliament and the President to rubber stamp a decision? The 2021 order that you're seeking to now have enforced, and you say it's enforced, yes, it's enforced until it's negative. Today it was laid in the Senate, and the senators have already filed a motion in the Parliament to negative the 2021 order, and therefore that will come up for debate. When it is laid in our House, the MPs in our House will also seek to file a motion to negative it. And why? We are of the respectful view that the 2021 order, far from being to simplify the process, as Faris has said, is an attempt to give power to the ruling party to be able to handpick a commissioner and deputy commissioners. So we raise that, and we ask all these independent commentators and so on, let them come out. Where's the Law Association on this matter? Where are all these persons who are so-called independents writing in newspaper columns and commenting on everything? We ask them to come forward. We ask civil society to put their fingers into this, because this is a very dangerous move.
So that was the opposition leader, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, stating her concerns with the legitimacy of the suggested process at yesterday's Monday night forum that the United National Congress regularly has every Monday. So we are being joined by attorney and former member of the Police Service Commission, Martin George. Good morning, Martin. How are you?
Yeah, hi. Good morning to you, Sweeney, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here.
So I don't know if you got a chance to review the amendments to the selection process, but the government is saying that the changes that they're making is just to make the process more streamlined. But the opposition leader has several concerns, including the independence of the process, and if the PSC, and she's questioning the independence of the PSC, because the PSC will be sending the entire list to the president, but the president actually has no power to narrow down that list. So there's concern, this is something that the opposition leader mentioned further on in her speech, that what right does the president, power does the president have to make those selections? So is there anything that triggers to you in terms of the independence of the new process, or are you in agreement with government that it's a necessary streamlining of a process that has typically been very long-winded?
Well, so as in all these types of circumstances, there are pros and cons on both sides of the equation. In terms of the government's position, I would certainly agree. Having sat as a commissioner continuously for 9 years, I have been through the selection process on more than one occasion, so I know it inside out. And I can tell you that the current dispensation, whereby you must engage the services of this firm, and previously it was a foreign firm that they had to engage, I think Penn State University, they used the services, and it was quite an arduous and expensive process. I think certainly that is not necessary. In fact, I am on record as having stated categorically to Trinidad and Tobago that the process that we have in place for the selection of a police commissioner is more complicated and involved and difficult and arduous than the process to appoint a prime minister, the process to appoint a president, the process to appoint a chief justice. So really and truly, from that perspective, one can fully understand and empathize and agree with any suggestion which says, look, let us try to make this process simpler. So therefore, from that perspective, yes, I think there is definitely a good foundation upon which the government can mount their argument for simplifying the process, because there's absolutely no need for making it so complicated and having it such a long, drawn-out process that takes years, so that by time you complete the process, for some persons lower down on the merit list, a year has elapsed and then the merit list is no longer valid, and you have all sorts of complications. In fact, right now, I think there are nominations which are languishing before the parliament for the position of deputy commissioner, and on which no action has been taken. And of course, those lists would expire. So therefore, that definitely is a good step if it is that you are trying to simplify this long, convoluted, long, winding road to appoint a commissioner.
But I'm hearing a but from you.
On the flip side, when one looks at what the new legislation provides, and the name of it is the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police Selection Process Order 2021. When one looks at what it provides for, you can see that there most inevitably will be litigation following the application of this process, because actually some of the points that were made by the honorable opposition leader are quite valid, because in a sense, what you really have reduced the Police Service Commission to now is basically a recruitment agency. Simply, so in other words, the same way you have some of the high-profile recruitment agencies who go out and then they create a short list and they submit it to you with the pros and cons, and then you, the employer, or you, the company who hired them, you would then decide, well, who you will choose as your CEO. That really is what is, the net effect of these changes. And there are some other, concerns that one would raise also as regards to this process, because you look where it says, the commission shall conduct a recruitment process, including inviting applications for the position. Now you ask yourself, just even that first step there, inviting applications, how are these invitations sent out? Is it that there will be a mass advertisement? Is it that in addition to the public advertisements, the commission can privately invite selected individuals and say, listen, hey, I am inviting you, John Brown, to apply for this position because, we favor you, or we want you to be, one of the persons considered, So just even that first line there, you can see the kind of worms that this is going to open up, and then if it is that there are private invitations, because there's nothing that seems to limit this to say that it is only public invitations. So
really,
if it is that there are private
do you think there's a do you think there's a real possibility of private invitations, though, for the post of police commissioner?
Sorry?
Do you really think that there's a possibility of private invitation for the post of police commissioner?
Well, I'm looking at the legislation.
Okay.
There's no limit on it. It says that the commission shall invite applications. The language is there. There's
is
nothing
it possible
to prevent
that it's poorly stated?
Sorry?
Is it possible that it's poorly stated, but what you're saying, regardless, it has to be
I
clarified?
like to choose my words more carefully, and I may say that it might be a case of inelegant use of language, you know? But the point is, it does open the Pandora's box for, you know, that type of interpretation, and persons may be challenging it. And if you recall, this process of, you know, appointment of a police commissioner is one that has been subjected to legal challenges in the past. Yeah. You know, let's not forget that, you know, this is always a contentious issue, and not just in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, even in Jamaica, and we can actually take quite a bit of learning and guidance from the scenario as it applies in Jamaica, because there was actually a Privy Council decision. And I would like to recommend, with the greatest of deference, I would like to recommend this Privy Council decision to the current members of the Police Service Commission. They ought to take this decision and study it, because the Privy Council remains our highest court of appeal, and therefore any decision of the Privy Council in this regard remains a binding authority on us here in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the case of Jamaicans for Justice versus the Attorney General, right, and the Police Service Commission in Jamaica, right? This case was decided by the Privy Council in actually just 2 years ago, in 2019. And in this matter, what was interesting is that this group called the Jamaicans for Justice, they had been making representations to the Police Service Commission in Jamaica saying, listen, in performance of your function and your duty, you ought to investigate, even if it is that there are negative things you have heard or that have been brought to your attention about a candidate. You ought to investigate these things. And in this particular scenario, it was a candidate who was actually very popular with the public in Jamaica because of his very aggressive stance against the criminals. However, he also had a dark side to his personality, in that he was also the person who they had the greatest number of police killings and, you know, extrajudicial killings reported against. And the point is, the Police Service Commission in Jamaica, what they did is they made cursory inquiries, and they got, you know, a generalized report in relation to that candidate. And this group, Jamaicans for Justice, they filed an action against the Police Service Commission saying, no, you must do more. You must actually do a full investigation to determine what is the truth. And the Privy Council actually upheld the, you know, the position taken by this group, Jamaicans for Justice. And they said, listen, separate and apart from your statutory duty, the Police Service Commission has an overarching common law duty to make the fullest possible investigation in such circumstances. And what the Privy Council said also is that the Jamaican Police Service Commission ought to have actually requested a full and thorough investigation from the Jamaican unit called INDICOM, which is also something I think we in Trinidad and Tobago ought to look at very closely in terms of patterning it, because we've heard several times our director of the PCA indicate, Mr. David West, he's indicated that, look, the Police Complaints Authority does not have enough legislative strength, it doesn't have enough teeth, it doesn't have enough, you know, basically firepower to be able to effectively carry out its role. And I'll tell you this, the idea of basically policing the police is not something where you consider it in an antagonistic role of, you know, us versus them, or the people versus the police, or anything of the sort. It is actually to make a better police service for everyone. You know, even in the US, I can tell you right now, you have scenarios where persons in the police service are saying, look, they feel demotivated, they feel dispirited because of all these calls to defund the police and, you know, the general antagonism that people feel towards the police, you know, coming out of the George Floyd experience. However, you have other officers who are saying, look, this has been actually an opportunity for their division to start taking stock of themselves, cleaning up their act, ensuring that they put the protocols in place and adhere to the correct provisions. So, we have to always take a global view of things. We must never look at it, from a narrow perspective, or just keeping, our focus on our microcosm.
So,
we must
so
always take a macro view of the position.
Really quickly, the opposition leader is calling for civil society comment on the new legislation or the new selection process. Can we expect to see you commenting a lot more on, in greater detail, with the aspects of the amendments that you have concerns about, the ones that you like and the ones you don't like?
Well, of course I will. And the thing is, I certainly would love to, hear the views of other persons on it, because at the end of the day, this is something which we all have to recognize has tremendous power to influence or determine our way forward. Now, in terms of one other aspect of the comment by the opposition leader, whereby it was said that, she raised the question of the fact that it now appears to be, you send basically a basket of candidates to the parliament, and it's really the cabinet gets to decide. Effectively, this is the position even now as it stands, because when you create that merit list, even though the Police Service Commission can make a recommendation, you are still subject to the negative resolution of the majority of parliament. Right now, the government holds the majority. So basically, once the government decides on a position and says, listen, we don't want this candidate, and they make a negative resolution, then you go to the next candidate on the merit list. So it actually is already that position. So maybe the question should be whether we want that to remain or whether we allow the full independence of the Police Service Commission by removing any negative resolution of Parliament whatsoever. Because if you recall, even in this present, the present office holder of the position of Commissioner of Police, he was not the first named choice on the list. But the government exercised its power of negative resolution, exercised it again, and until they eventually, appeared to get the candidate they wanted. Now, the point is there's nothing wrong with that because the law provides for that. The question I think Trinidad and Tobago needs to ask itself is whether we want that type of provision to remain at all in the law. If it is that we as a people want that to remain, then fine. But if it is that we feel in order to give the Police Service Commission its fullest level of independence, then I think that is the most fundamental aspect that we need to look at and have discussions on as to whether we keep it or remove it.
I wanted to ask, switch tack a little bit. What do you think the future of policing looks like in Trinidad and Tobago, especially based on?
Well, the thing is, there have been quite a few, very innovative things that have been introduced under the tenure of this current commissioner. And I think even before that, previous commissioners have tried, to bring about improvements. However, what we need to recognize and understand is that, look, in terms of the basics of policing, in terms of your levels of crime detection and solving crimes, etc., those things never go away. And regardless of all the other innovations and all the other, the bells and whistles that you may bring in, I think the public needs fundamentally to be able to feel that sense of safety and security that, look, hey, of course, when things open back up, if you want to go out late at night, you want to go to dinner, you want to go to a movie, you want to go hang with friends, you need to feel that sense of comfort and security to know that, look, hey, I can leave my home, I can go from A to B and come back home safely without, any real fear of being attacked, mugged, robbed, murdered, etc. So these are, I think, the fundamentals that will never go away, regardless of how innovative and high tech we become. So we must always remember that as the fundamental of our policing function and role.
Thank you so much, Martin George, for joining us to offer some clarity, especially your informed opinion, because you're not just an attorney, you're a former member of the Police Service Commission. So thanks so much for joining us this morning. And as an aside, that Jamaicans for Justice versus the Attorney General, they were dealing with Renako Adams.
No, actually, it wasn't him. It was another one. It's Hewitt.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Just because Jamaica has some legendary
You're
police
familiar
commissioners.
with the group.
They have some legendary police commissioners. That's all I will say on that matter.
The thing is, I'll tell you something. That organization they have, INDICOM, it is really something that we in Trinidad and Tobago should look at patterning, because it is definitely a very useful organization in terms of, bringing about that balance, the checks and balances in terms of your security services, because they deal not just with the police, but they deal basically with all the armed forces.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. We'll definitely look into it in the newsroom. Martin George, thanks so much for joining us. Have a fantastic day.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to take a very quick break, but when we come back, I promised you that we're going to be dealing with Caribbean Airlines, and we'll do so after this very quick break.